Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the incredibly dynamic and, well, really competitive world of the cafe business right there in London, UK.
It certainly is competitive.
Our source material for this dive is a comprehensive SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Mm.
It really breaks down the internal factors and those external market forces shaping things.
A really useful framework.
Exactly. And our mission for you, the listener, is to distill the most important nuggets of knowledge from this, give you a real shortcut to being well-informed. Maybe you're curious about market dynamics, consumer trends, or perhaps, like me, you just really appreciate a great cup of coffee.
Can't argue with that.
So to set the stage, what are the sheer numbers telling us? Just how big is this market we're talking about?
Well, the figures are quite telling, actually. The UK cafe and bars market, it's estimated at a pretty substantial USD 33.95 billion in 2025.
34 billion, wow.
Yeah. And what's more, it's projected to grow. Think USD 43.72 billion by 2030. That's a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 5.18%.
Okay, 5.18%. So that signals, what, pretty consistent, healthy expansion year over year. Seems quite resilient.
It does, yeah. It shows remarkable resilience in this market. And London's cafe scene, of course, is a massive contributor to that overall picture.
Right.
And just to give you a sense of scale, think about this. We're talking about 98 million cups of coffee consumed daily in the UK in 2024.
98 million cups daily. That's almost like a silent collective hum across the country, isn't it? Every street corner brewing up a storm.
It really is.
It certainly highlights a truly robust coffee culture. I know that number has even increased slightly recently, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. We've seen that daily consumption creep up from 95 million cups back in 2022 to the 98 million now in 2024. It really cements coffee shops as a staple of social life, professional life, too.
Yeah.
This isn't just a fleeting trend. It seems deeply ingrained.
And it's not just about the sheer volume of coffee, is it? It's the incredible variety available. You see these massive chains like Costa Coffee, what is it, nearly 2,800 outlets?
That's right.
Greg's with over 2,100, Starbucks with more than 1,000, all alongside countless independent, specialty cafes. Are they truly catering to different people? Or is it just a constant fight for the same customers?
Well, that diversity is absolutely key because it allows cafes to target an incredibly wide range of consumer preferences, different demographics, often at the same time.
Okay.
So whether you're, say, a budget-conscious customer grabbing a quick bite, or maybe a real coffee connoisseur seeking that artisanal single-origin brew, London likely has a cafe for you.
Right.
They often serve different needs throughout the day, too, different occasions.
So it's not just the coffee itself. It's about curating the whole atmosphere, the experience. Beyond the cup, what else are London cafes doing to, stand out? Are they becoming more than just places to grab a flat white?
Oh, absolutely. Cafes are increasingly becoming unique customer experiences, sort of interactive venues, really, hosting cultural activities, live music, poetry slams, book clubs, even art exhibitions.
Interesting.
And these curated experiences, they really enhance customer engagement, crucial for differentiating themselves in such a crowded market.
Makes sense.
And something else that's compelling is how many are embracing sustainability and ethical sourcing. Think biodegradable packaging, ethically produced coffee beans, proper recycling programs.
Yeah, you see that a lot more now.
It do, and it resonates deeply with that growing consumer demand, particularly among younger demographics, for businesses that are environmentally responsible.
I can see why sustainability would be crucial for attracting younger people, but is it genuinely driving revenue?
Yeah.
Or is it more just a brand halo effect?
It's probably a bit of both. It's definitely a brand halo, but it's also a growing driver of loyalty for a significant chunk of consumers, people who are actually willing to pay a bit more for those ethical choices.
Okay. And what about tech? Are cafes embracing things like mobile apps, those cloud-based tills, maybe even AI-powered coffee machines?
Yes, definitely. Technology adoption is happening pretty rapidly. This technological integration, it improves operational efficiency, sure, but it also helps personalize the customer experience.
How so?
Well, things like data analytics allow cafes to offer tailored recommendations, based on past orders or preferences. It makes each visit feel a bit more unique, more efficient. It's a powerful tool for keeping customers coming back.
Okay, so while London's cafes clearly have this strong foundation, these strengths, every success story has its pressure points.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears. What are the cracks appearing? Where are the real weaknesses, the vulnerabilities?
Right. Well, the first and perhaps the most striking vulnerability is the high operating costs.
Ah, the London rent factor.
Exactly. Commercial rents in prime London areas are a huge strain. We're talking ranges from, say, £100,000 up to maybe £500,000 annually.
£500,000 just for rent.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's significantly higher than the maybe 50,000 to 150,000 range you might find in other parts of the UK.
It's like trying to open a shop inside a luxury penthouse, as you said.
It kind of is. And then you add barista wages on top of that, typically maybe £7 to £9 an hour, other staffing costs. You see why profit margins often get squeezed. They typically only range from maybe 5% to 15%.
Wow, not much room for error there.
Yeah.
Sounds tough before you even open the doors. And then there's just the sheer number of competitors, right? Over 10,000 branded coffee shop outlets across the UK in 2024, many packed into London. Places like Shoreditch or Covent Garden must be facing potential market saturation.
That density absolutely leads to saturation in certain areas. It really is a battle for every customer walking past.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, cafes are also highly vulnerable to, well, economic sensitivity.
Because coffee out is seen as a treat, not essential.
Precisely. Coffee shop visits are often considered non-essential, a discretionary spend. So the current cost of living crisis, high inflation, that's significantly reduced consumer confidence. We're seeing lower footfall in some prime locations and a noticeable 4% drop in average spending. People are just being more careful.
Understandable. And I imagine the coffee beans themselves aren't getting any cheaper. How reliant are these businesses on imports? What does that mean for their stability?
That's a critical point. The UK imported, get this, 1 billion pounds worth of coffee in 2023.
£1 billion.
Yep. And 97% of that was sourced from climate-vulnerable countries, places like Brazil and Vietnam.
Right, so prone to disruption.
Exactly. This heavy reliance means cafes aren't just selling coffee, they're basically trading in a global commodity that's highly susceptible to climate change, geopolitical issues, poor harvests.
Which means price swings and potential supply problems.
Absolutely. It exposes them to price volatility and supply chain disruptions, hitting their cost structures hard. For London cafes, managing supplier relationships, maybe even exploring direct trade, it isn't just about ethics anymore. It's a critical risk management strategy.
Those are some significant headwinds, definitely. But let's turn our attention to the upside. Despite these challenges, where can London cafes find avenues for growth, for innovation? What are the opportunities looking like?
Well, what's interesting here is the continued growth in specialty coffee. Consumers seem increasingly interested in things like single origin beans, creative cold brews, innovative brewing techniques. You hear about anaerobic fermentation now.
Right, the really nerdy coffee stuff.
Exactly. And cafes can really capitalize on this. Offer those premium artisanal products, attract the discerning coffee fans, and potentially justify slightly higher price points.
And we're seeing big shifts in health and wellness trends impacting menus too, right? Like increased demand for decaf, apparently up 7%.
That's right. And plant-based milks are huge. Oat milk seems to be the favorite, preferred by over 31% of consumers.
Wow, nearly a third.
Yeah. Plus, you've got those superfood lattes, turmeric, matcha, that kind of thing.
The cafes can tap into that.
Definitely. They can expand their menus to include these health-focused options, cater to evolving tastes, maybe tap into new customer segments.
Okay.
And another significant opportunity lies in expansion and franchising. It's a growing trend. Look at Costa. 40% of their stores are franchises. Starbucks, it's even higher, like 70%.
So independents could look at that model too.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It presents a clear path for some independent cafes to explore franchising or maybe just open new locations themselves, perhaps in less saturated outer boroughs like, say, Enfield or Bexley, where rents might be a bit more manageable.
Getting bigger or spreading out makes sense.
Yeah.
What about reaching customers digitally? How important is that online presence, the marketing, for getting noticed in a city like London? I saw a stat that 56% of London diners discover places via third-party platforms like ResDiary.
Yeah, that data point really highlights how critical digital marketing is now. Cafes absolutely need to leverage social media, online booking platforms. It's key for visibility, for running targeted campaigns, attracting customers, and keeping them.
Right.
And beyond digital, don't underestimate collaborations and community engagement. Partnering with other local businesses, hosting events, participating in big things like the London Coffee Festival that can significantly boost footfall and brand recognition creates a real local connection.
Those sound like promising avenues, definitely. But, okay, no business exists in a vacuum. Let's look at the threats, those external challenges, the risks currently facing London cafes.
Right, the external pressures. Well, the most immediate threat, which we sort of touched on with imports, is rising coffee prices.
Yeah, you mentioned the vulnerability there.
They reached a 15-year high recently, 3,300 pounds per ton in 2024. That's up 15%. And there are forecasts of potential further increases, maybe 20-25% by mid-2025.
Why such big jumps?
It's a mix of things. Climate impacts on harvests, ongoing geopolitical issues, just generally poor harvests in key regions. These price hikes are a direct threat to profit margins, especially for cafes trying to offer those premium beans. It's a global commodity. London cafes are really at the mercy of that global supply chain.
And it's not just other coffee shops they need to worry about, is it? Competition from non-coffee places too, like bubble tea.
Exactly. Bubble tea chains are booming. Gongcha, for example, they're planning massive expansion from 13 stores to maybe 500.
500? Wow.
Yeah. And juice bars are growing too, seeing about a 6 per CAGR. These are gaining popularity, particularly with younger consumers, and that could potentially divert spending away from traditional cafes.
So more options competing for that disposable income.
Precisely. It diversifies consumer spending. And we can't ignore that economic uncertainty factor again. The cost of living crisis, high inflation, it means reduced consumer spending overall. We're seeing stats like 29% of operators reporting no net new outlets opening because of these economic constraints.
So expansion plans are getting shelved.
It seems so for some. It raises that important question. How long can discretionary spending like cafe visits hold up if economic pressure continues?
What about potential regulatory changes? Things like new health and safety rules or maybe stricter environmental standards? Could that add to their costs?
Oh, without a doubt. New regulations, maybe stricter sustainability requirements or changes to food hygiene laws could definitely require significant investment from cafes. That impacts their bottom line, demands really careful budgeting to stay compliant.
Right. One last area, shifts in how people actually drink coffee.
Yes, that's a big one too. There are shifting in consumer preferences that are less about direct competition and more about lifestyle changes. For instance, increased home coffee consumption, people investing in better machines at home.
Yeah, the pandemic probably boosted that.
It certainly did. Or a growing preference for ready-to-drink, or RTD coffee. That market was valued at $35 billion globally in 2024. That could reduce visits to physical cafes.
And people cutting back on caffeine later in the day.
Yeah, that's another interesting finding. Apparently, 2 in 5 coffee drinkers now avoid caffeine after lunch. That could potentially limit the most lucrative peak afternoon hours for cafes.
Okay, so pulling all this together, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, what are the key strategic takeaways? How can London cafes adapt and hopefully thrive in this environment?
Well, to thrive, it seems London cafes need to be quite strategic. First, really leverage that specialty coffee trend. Invest in high-quality, traceable beans. It attracts discerning customers, potentially justifies premium pricing.
Play to that quality strength.
Exactly. Second, enhance the customer experience. Offer those unique events, create comfortable, inviting spaces. That aligns with the finding that, 53% of Londoners prioritize social activities when they go out.
Make it more than just coffee.
Right. Third, adopt cost-saving measures where possible, maybe using secondhand furniture, leasing equipment instead of buying outright, just to mitigate those cripplingly high startup costs.
Be savvy with the budget.
Fourth, diversify the offerings. Incorporate those health-focused products we talked about, maybe more non-coffee beverages, to capture a broader market share.
Appeal to more people.
And finally, really strengthen that digital presence. Use social media effectively, leverage online platforms for visibility, bookings, building customer loyalty. It's about being nimble, multifaceted, really.
What an illuminating deep dive this has been. It's crystal clear that London's cafe business in 2025 is, well, it's set for continued growth. Definitely driven by that strong coffee culture and some really interesting opportunities.
The potential is there.
But it also faces some pretty significant challenges, as we've heard. Strategic adaptation, really leveraging those strengths and opportunities while mitigating the weaknesses and threats, seems absolutely key to thriving in this really dynamic market.
Adaptation is crucial.
So, as you, our listener, go about your day, maybe grabbing your next cup, here's a final thought to chew on. Given these rising trends of home coffee consumption and that growing ready-to-drink market, how might London's cafes need to evolve their physical spaces and their actual offerings to remain essential third places? How do they provide value that goes beyond just the beverage itself? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the topics that intrigue you.